Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. Mike, we talked about this a little bit last week. We talked about how there was really, I guess this was supposed to be something to ramp up comic buyers. Marvel made a lot of announcements. And I have to say, I think this was the worst week Marvel has had in a long time.
The
In that
announcements were not good.
we found out we're rewriting Giant Size X-Men to put Miss Marvel in. Confirmation from an editor that basically comic books are just IP farms for video games and movies and TV shows. We kind of always suspected that, but we got confirmation of it. But I think perhaps the most disheartening one, I think the one that is the shot over the bow that just really hit us wrong as fans, is they have decided to resurrect Gwen Stacy in the main continuity. Now, there are some folks who go, hey, this has already been done. I think the important difference to this is not Gwenpool, who's an alternate universe thing, or Spider Gwen, who's an alternate universe thing. As this is being pitched, this is the Gwen Stacy who died in Amazing Spider-Man 121, one of the more seminal comic events of all time. And I'll kind of describe how Marvel is saying this here. Apparently, she will be resurrected and turned into a Weapon X style assassin. The cover that they are showing with this has her having claws protruding out of her suit and beheading several people. And they're saying, well, Gwen is back and deadlier than ever, which is kind of weird because she was not a deadly type character. Now, what some folks might say to this is, well, Reed, resurrecting a dead love interest and having them come back, that could be something poignant. Maybe this is a way they interject a new story into the life of Peter Parker. And you might be correct, except for Peter Parker does not appear to be the person who will be in the story. This is going to be featuring Gwenpool, Jeff the Land Shark, and Kate Bishop. And it will not be in the pages of The Amazing Spider-Man. It will be in a 5-issue miniseries called Gwenpool. I am sure Spider-Man will show up at some point, but even if you were going to resurrect Gwen, you would think maybe having that done in the pages of Amazing Spider-Man, maybe as a way to shake up Peter Parker's life, or instead this seems just to be done, I don't know, to make Spider-Man not a part of it. Um, I'll say this. Look, Gwen Stacy's death in comic books. Mike, you can provide a historical context on this. It is one of the most important comic book issues that's ever been produced. It's one of the only times we have seen the hero fail to save his love interest at that point. Now, obviously, it's been replicated several times since then, but this was a seismic event when it happened.
It was
And
monumental. It's hard to overstate like what it was for comic book fans at the time. I was a comic book buyer at that point in time, and it was it was devastating. You never thought that the hero always saves the girl.
yep,
And that's just the way it is, and they turned it on its head and she died and people were outraged. But you got to remember, comic book community was this tiny little community in 1973. It was just, some teenage fans, a few adults, and comic book conventions were just getting started, but they were just in the ballroom at, third rate hotels in San Diego and New York. They weren't big, huge events like they are now. There were no Spider-Man movies at that time. Comic books were a world unto themselves, but it was devastating nonetheless. And it is held up over time as being a seminal work, a game-changing moment for character arc. And and then they, to their credit, they kept her dead for a good long while, and
yeah,
stay true to that story. I think out of the respect of the moment in comic book history when they decided to go down that dark path, and then try to move Peter forward as a character after a big moment like that is something that good writers dream of tackling and trying to create stories before and after and during the event, of course, seminal moment. Yeah, absolutely. And things changed in comics after that, and all hold no holds barred after that. And eventually, comics did go to a very dark place. About 15 years later, when you had Alan Moore and Frank Miller, no longer were they afraid to go to the dark places. Albeit for yours and mine taste, those kind of dark places are good to go and explore in comic books in small batches. It doesn't have to go completely dark, because then it's dark all the time. And superheroes are about light and hope and aspiration. But yeah, seeing Peter fail in that way was incredible. And it was so startling that, if you don't know about the wonderful little side history of Marvel, when they would license their comics to be printed outside of the United States, Spider-Man was so popular in Mexico that they were publishing it bi-weekly. Mm-hmm. So they would get the stories from Marvel, and they had license to reprint them and re-letter them in Spanish. And they were going gangbusters down there, and everyone loved Spider-Man, Hombre Rana, right? And he was kids loved him, of course. Who wouldn't love Spider-Man, right?
Spider-Man, yeah.
But they ran into a crunch in the 70s because they got the license, I think, in the late 60s. So they would double up. They were printing Spider-Man twice a month. Eventually, they ran out of old stories to print twice a month. And so they said, can our artists and writers write our own stories so that we can keep printing 2 issues a month? You got to figure, that's a breakneck pace, right, for comic books. Can you imagine if writers today had to put out 2 titles a month plus whatever else they were doing?
I mean, some comics do it, but it's with 5 different backup artists, and yeah.
Yeah. And it was this one artist, and he really was a big fan of Gwen. So Marvel said, sure. They went to DC and they said, sure. They went to Marvel in New York and they said, sure, you can create your own content. So when Gwen Stacy died, we're like, well, what are we going to do?
Their alternate history, basically.
Everybody in Mexico loves Spider-Man, and they love Gwen Stacy, and so they continued writing Gwen Stacy stories after she died in America. They kept her alive, I forget for how many years, but yeah, they had the liberty to do that with that property at that time. So it's kind of amazing. She was a very popular character. Everybody loved Gwen, and everyone knows Mary Jane. But at that point in time, I forget what happened between Peter and Mary, but Gwen became the main love interest. And he actually got married to Gwen, quote unquote, in the Mexican comics.
No, it shows the power of that story. I mean, that they even went with their own interpretation of it. I think the thing is, this just continues to. There's 2 things here that I think are huge. One is it's the disrespect of the classic creators and the stories they told, and this idea that modern creators know better. And 2, I think it's the fact that it again shows that they don't understand Spider-Man. And I'll kind of touch on the first one first about not understanding Spider-Man, and then I think where it's disrespectful. The death of Gwen Stacy in the terms of Spider-Man's story, it was what kind of made Peter different. The thing about Spider-Man is where he was always such a great character, and I think why he is so loved. I mean, he is the most beloved superhero in terms of merchandise and sales. Batman is close, Superman's up there, but Spider-Man is far and away one. And I think the reason he resonates with so many, some folks say it's the mask. I think that helps. The costume's cool, the toys. Credit to Ditko for what he designed. But I think why American comic book fans fell in love with Spider-Man so much is he was a character that truly had a journey. And Gwen's death was kind of the second seminal thing of when Spider-Man grew up. From when Uncle Ben died to the Gwen moment, Peter was becoming a hero and he got a little more cocky and a little more confident. I love the way the issue is where Spider-Man like thinks he got her and he's pulling her up and he's cracking wise. Like, hey, I got you, and then she's dead. And it's like that became the other portion of Spider-Man where he kind of grew up, where he realized
Yeah.
there's stakes to this. I can lose even when I'm trying to do the right thing, even when I am 100% in on this. And it's what I think made us like Peter so much. The other part is when you look at the subsequent issues, what the death of Gwen did to the characters around Peter. Mary Jane went from the fun party girl to she kind of grew up. There's that great issue, and I'm forgetting it, where he kicks her out after Gwen's dead, and he's like, just leave, and she shuts the door and says, no, I'm staying. And it showed the growth of Mary Jane. It showed how she had changed as a character. And it was the springboard for where they built that future of the character. And I think all of that,
Right.
that was why we loved Spider-Man. We loved the fact that, yes, it's fake. Yes, it's the Green Goblin. Yes, it's radiated spider powers, but he felt real. Peter felt
Yeah.
real in a way that Bruce Wayne, in a way that Clark Kent, in a way a lot of the DC characters at that point didn't, and that
Yeah.
you kind of felt like he was a high school student, a college student, suffers heartbreak, and then here comes this devastating moment, even when he is at the apex of being Spider-Man. I think the other portion historically, that's really the shift where Green Goblin became his greatest villain. To that point, Doc Ock had kind of been more of Peter's greatest villain. And there's still a debate who's number one and number two. But if you want to talk about what turned the Green Goblin into kind of Spider-Man's Joker, it's that moment. It's that death. And unlike something like where Joker killed Jason Todd, and that was like a phone poll deciding thing, and they've done things for years about how one guy called in like 500 times because he really hated Jason Todd. That that always kind of felt like DC got dark. This really felt like genuine storytelling of we need to show there's stakes to this. We've had Spider, and that was what was so great about Spidey was there was always genuine stakes to Spider-Man. People changed, people evolved. You saw characters like Flash Thompson, who was an absolute jerk and a cliche at the beginning, who becomes his friend and his college roommate, and later on becomes a hero in the army and has his
Yeah.
leg blown off and becomes Agent. They all had stories. Spider-Man's world felt real.
Yeah.
And Gwen was always that part that made everyone in the Spider-Man cast grow up. And I think the fact that they don't get that just shows, I think, to me, again, they don't really seem to understand what makes Spider-Man work. I think
I
the
think
second
this is
part,
a
go ahead, Mike.
classic. This is a classic top down, like somebody on high said, we gotta create we gotta have a female character, and Gwenpool and Spider Gwen did well. We gotta, you boys go write me Gwen Stacy's coming
Gwen
back.
Stacy's back. Well, no,
But wouldn't
I
it be
think,
cool, like, if she was an assassin? No, it wouldn't be cool. That's not Gwen Stacy.
well, and you
Wouldn't it
talk
be
about this is modern writers looking back at the modern writers, as much as I like quite a few of them, they stand on the shoulders of giants, so to speak, in terms of why they get to write this medium. And what I really don't like is a lot of them now, instead of standing on those shoulders and going, wow, thank you for building this, they look down at them somewhat and like just you guys weren't smart. Like they think they know better. That they think that they know better than the writers who made the decisions with Spider-Man and built this up. And this is where there's this trend for years, the women in refrigerators thing, which was based on the Green Lantern comic book with Kyle Rayner, where his girlfriend was killed and stuffed into a refrigerator. I think there's even a website that's kind of built. I think Gail Simone was the one who coined that. And look, there was in the 90s an overreaction to this where they just started grossly killing off female characters to give the main male character motivation and inspiration to move on. Gwen Stacy was not that. This was
Yeah.
storytelling. This was like any classic novel that you read, any classic story where in the middle a tragic death happens. It is a thing of storytelling, and there's this thing now to look at it like, oh, it was so disrespectful by the writers to kill Gwen, and Gwen didn't have her own agency and all this stuff. And it's no, Gwen was a character in the high stakes world of Spider-Man and one of these psychotic villains. But and that happens to real people as well. Like where bad people do bad things, this was comic books bringing a little semblance of that to it. And instead, we have these modern writers now who just look at it as, well, Gwen really should have fought back, and it was just for Peter's story. And to be honest, of course it was for Peter's story. We weren't buying the amazing Gwen Stacy. We were
No,
buying the amazing Spider-Man. If
right.
Gwen Stacy was popular the way Lois Lane was, where she had her own comic book and that ran for years, or popular in the way that we've seen other female characters become, like Harley Quinn or wherever, this probably doesn't happen to Gwen. Gwen was a character that, yes, people loved, but she was a part of Peter's story. And
Yeah.
this happened. And so I think it's so sad to see some of these modern creators look back and kind of almost in judgment on people in the past, like, oh, you callously killed off Gwen. How dare you disrespect female characters? And it's like, it just shows they can't see out of their own cone of vision where that's what they want to see. Instead of saying, no, this was a seminal moment for this major character in Marvel Comics, and it made the whole brand grow up and it changed the character fundamentally. It's just really sad to see. We also touch on the part you're bringing up. I mean, instead of Gwen, I don't know how it's more respectful to Gwen to bring her back, and now she's a assassin beheading people. Like it'd be one thing if we brought Gwen back and Peter
It's
had to deal with the ramifications of that, and her. You could even have a lot of great drama if she's mad at him for you put my life at risk and you never told me and I was a target because you could do so many things that I mean they've touched on before that you could emotionally get to with that where you could feel Peter's guilt at that, almost make it like a second Uncle Ben kind of
yeah.
thing. Instead, mind wiped assassin going against Gwenpool, Jeff the Land Shark, and Kate Bishop. Like,
Yeah, this
what are
is
we
just
doing?
it's like laughable. And and maybe it's going to be a funny comic with full of satire. It seems to be set up,
Could be.
it could be a joke. It seems like a joke. It's laughable to have Gwen Stacy come back as some like Bucky
Weapon X
Barnes, uh,
style.
mind wiped by Red Skull and become an assassin. Like
No, I mean,
it's ridiculous. Like
well, and
Gwen
I think
Stacy
this
cutting
is
off heads, and come on, man,
the
come on.
larger point to this, and this is where, sometimes people jump on fans when we get mad about certain things. And I remember when they did the Spider Gwen thing, there were a few fans who didn't like that. And people to, oh, it's an alternate universe. The second Spider Gwen happened to this was inevitable. This was inevitable. We were going to end up here where this was undone. It was
Yeah.
inevitable because the more they do these ideas, that Marvel, and I hate saying this because I really like Marvel comics. They used to be the house of ideas. They don't have any ideas anymore. All they have now is let's go destroy the past. That's all they have. They
Mhm.
can't, they don't create anymore. They don't, so they change existing characters. They don't know how to create a moment that is as seminal as what happened in Gwen. So what they think is we can use that and try to do something shocking with it. It's just the lack of commitment to what makes me so frustrated with this. This issue, that death, is the byproduct of decades, about a decade. I mean, 121 issues at that point. So you're talking at least probably a decade of incredible Spider-Man storytelling
Yeah.
from Stan and Steve and so many incredible creatives. And they built that story to this crescendo, 120 something issues in, where it mattered. These guys can't do that. They don't know how to create something like that
It
anymore.
really smells to me like what that letter that came out this week said, that the marketing guys said Jeff the Land Shark needs a comic. We need to flesh that out because you know what? This could be a really good cartoon if Gwen Stacy was an assassin and we had the Land Shark. And oh, by the way, let's throw Kate Bishop in there and we're
And
gonna monkey around and we're gonna find out if we can get an animated series out of it. That's what it sounds like.
it's
It smells.
just
That's what it smells like, and it doesn't smell good. It smells like satirical comedy. But if they're going to try and play it serious and make a Disney Plus cartoon out of Gwen
Gwen
Stacy and
Stacy's
friends,
resurrection.
the happy assassin with the land shark friend, I'm like, that's ridiculous, man.
No, and I think it's just really bad form that in 1 week,
It's so
two of pro
ridiculous.
two of
You
probably the
gotta
most
laugh. You
important.
gotta laugh, right?
No, I mean,
It's
I guess. I mean,
or either that or cry. I don't
Well, and
know.
it's again, like I'm not gonna. I'll be honest. There's gonna be people who buy this and review it and just rip it to shreds. I'm not even gonna pick any of these up. It's more just apathy. I think the saddest thing, and look, we're a smaller channel. I'm sure no one from Marvel ever watches any of our videos. But what I would say is, if anyone from Marvel would ever watch any of these, the biggest question I would just ask with a lot of the decisions that they're making is this really worth it? Is what you're doing really worth it? Like
Oh
tearing
yeah,
down these classic stories,
yeah.
tearing down the things that built, like, was it really worth it?
They
Is
don't
it,
care. They don't
like
care.
to
They got
trash
it.
the Punisher the way they have, to destroy the Hulk the way they did in the movies, to take some of these characters and just have an axe to grind with the people who built this. That's the question I'd look and go, is this really worth? It almost seems like there is no one in the room asking that question.
No,
Guys,
they're
is
they're
this little 5 issue miniseries, is this really worth doing that? And that's the part they don't consider anymore. And it's just sad because you would think the people working in Marvel Comics would have a greater appreciation for this stuff than us fans do. Because they are the creatives. They are writing comic books. You would think they would look at an event like that and go, man, what an amazing job those creatives did to make a moment that resonated this much.
I think
And they don't care instead.
in the 80s and the 90s, the folks that worked in comics in that era, they had that they had that kind of perspective. But as it turned to the 21st century and everything got hyper, um, you know, commercialized, then we lost that because, like they said in the letter this week, we are just an idea
Just an
farm
IP farm.
for video games. And hey, if we can get Gwen Stacy as a death assassin and get a video game of her palling around with Landshark, we could have a video game hit or an animated Disney series, with Gwen as a foul mouthed shark lover. And, that could be a hit. And somebody in the boardroom
Sadly,
said,
you're
hey,
probably right that
it
this
tests
is
well in market analysis. It tests well with ages 14 to 22. Okay, we'll tell the creatives to start working on that. And I think they don't have a choice. I think they're like, and you want me to put the land shark and okay, and Gwen
Gwenpool
Stacy's
and Kate Bishop.
coming back, and you got to believe that some of the creatives are cringing, but that's how they make their money because I can draw, I can letter, I can write, I can color, and now we've got okay, I'll put Gwen Stacy in. Oh, but you want her to be an assassin, and okay,
It's
and she's gonna have Wolverine claws. Yeah, I
just
could
sad,
draw that.
man.
You can draw that, right? Yeah, I could draw that.
Yeah,
Okay, boss, you got it. Landshark and Gwen Stacy cutting off heads. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, I can draw that. You hired me to draw. I could draw that. There you
yeah.
go.
It's just you would certainly you would think with a giant size X-Men in this with the two comics they're doing with this, you would think it would be for better reasons. Instead, and let's be honest, you're probably right. This is probably so that this version of Gwen can be a new skin on Marvel Rivals. So that on Contest of Champions, this character can be downloaded so that Marvel Legends can produce a figure of it. And
Yep.
I think from the comic end, they're hoping, will we tick enough people off that they'll buy? Will
Yeah.
they buy? Can we do something so disrespectful that maybe people will buy just so they can get mad? Um, it's just sad.
It's
I
very.
wish this was the type of stuff we weren't doing, but apparently it is. As always, folks, let us know. What do you guys think below? What do you think about them doing this? Do you agree with this? Do you disagree with this? I'll also say I really feel bad that Kate Bishop gets thrown. I love the Hawkeye series that Matt Fraction did.
What
That was
did
Clint
Kate
Barton and
Bishop
Kate
do to
Bishop.
deserve that?
Why does Kate Bishop always
It's
seem to get thrown
it's like
into
a
things
punishment.
awful?
You can't do that
Like
to
I don't,
Kate
I'm
Bishop.
not a huge fan of the character, but I do think of relatively new characters. She's actually one that has a little bit of substance to her. It
Yeah.
kind of works. And for some reason, like every crap story I hear, they're like, and Kate Bishop. It's like, okay. She's probably gonna catch some strays as a result of that. As always, folks, let us know what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate it. God bless you. We'll catch you on our next video.
Thanks, everybody.